I love the concept of a nuzlocke. They add a unique challenge to most games. Most people know the base rule set behind a nuzlocke already, so I won't go over that, and this is where I want to introduce air combat, or as I like to call it, a nuzlocke with an airplane. This game from 1995 is the precursor for the entire Ace Combat franchise, and is the sequel to the arcade title. So instead of being able to just restart a mission once you get shot down, you lose the aircraft that you were piloting, which can lead to some moments where you could lose the best aircraft in the game, and be left with the equivalent of a flying brick. With that condition present, you can see why I said it's just a nuzlocke with aircraft, but I decided to play through the game to see how really hard it is. Before you even get into a jet, the game tells you that you need to know the story, and there is a lot of text and voiceover that for some reason doesn't match the text speed, but the basics of it are that an unnamed terrorist group that is not Belkan or Erusian decided that one day they just really didn't like the government of the Scully Islands, so they just took it over. So Yuzha hires a mercenary company known as Scarface to deal with the terrorists. So the first mission begins, and we can choose our aircraft from those that are available, the F-4 Phantom or the F-14 Tomcat. I chose the F-14 because it's a well-balanced aircraft and I can pretend that I am Tom Cruise. So once we are up in the air, we have our first objective, and that is to shoot down some enemy supply planes that are in the airspace. It is a bog standard mission meant to acclimatize us to how the aircraft works, and it works really well because you're not in any high risk situation where you could crash or get shot down. This is where I'd like to mention that the AI in this game are not the most threatening things in the world. Most of the time they just fly through the air without much of a care in the world, treating it like a vacation instead of a war zone. Then again, that is probably because I chose normal for the difficulty. Hard does make the enemies aces, which does make them far more aggressive, but I decided I wanted to play this as quick as possible, so I chose normal. In total for the first mission, there are just 6 targets in total to shoot down. This is where you can actually shorten the time spent on each mission. The main targets are all that the game will really ask for you to destroy. So for most of the game, we will be focusing on the main targets, and that just ends up making this game really short. But with the downing of that final aircraft, the first mission is completed, and we get probably one of my favorite things about this game, the little spin around the aircraft with a song that just ends up making me so happy to hear it, because it's just upbeat and it just congratulates you. It's like, hey, you did it, congratulations. The second mission, there isn't much to talk about either. It was an air superiority mission which required us to shoot down some bombers that were being escorted by some fighters. After nearly running face first
Hello there.
into one of said bombers because I thought it was a Morgan or something, we swooped around to take it out and even shot down a few of its escorts. The escorts of course took a little bit longer, because you often have to fly in circles to find them, so that way you can lock onto them, and then there's a chance that your missiles just might miss because they decided that they don't want to lock onto the target for some reason. But we took them down with very little issue, so there's not much going on there. Of course, we had to go back for the supply ship and the other 2 bombers, because that is our objective. And once the final B-52 was shot down, mission 2 was in the bag. Before we continued on, I want to check out the aircraft list and possibly purchase a couple of new aircraft, as I have a feeling we're going to need more lives. This is where we are introduced to the stats system in the game. Each aircraft comes with a unique set of stats. Some are really balanced and some are specialized, and others, they exist.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
The developers didn't want to use real-life statistics as that might overcomplicate their arcade flight game, so they seem to have rolled the dice for some plain statistics. The F-22 is one of them, with its offense stat, which determines how good it is at combat, being a solid 2, meaning it's not very good at shooting down other things, which is the one thing it was designed for. Meanwhile, you have the A-10 Warthog over here, with an impressive offense stat of 4, which while I understand it's a good attacking aircraft, that for the longest time was the threat to both the enemies and allies' mental state, it normally isn't very good at shooting down other aircraft, but according to the game's stats, the A-10 is better or equal to the F-22. But after buying an F-18, we decided to launch our way into the third mission, which is an interception mission. This tasks us with shooting down every single aircraft in the skies. It's kind of self-explanatory. The bigger AWACS-like aircraft were rather easy to shoot down as they don't have a super tight turning radius like a fighter. They went down rather quickly, but the smaller, more nimbler fighters started the age-old game of flying around in circles once again, just praying I get a good chance to shoot a missile at them. It took me longer than I wanted to complete this mission, but once the last fighter was down, the mission was in the bag. Before we dive into the next mission, we get the choice to hire a wingman. These AI aircraft are hired by the player for credits and do give the feeling of running a mercenary group. They range in skill and aircraft and can be issued orders before each mission. They can cover the player, fly off and do whatever they want, and in some cases be told to secure specific targets. The mission is simple though. The enemy has hunkered down in some buildings of the evacuated city. Fly over and destroy these buildings. All to one of my favorite tracks in the entire game. Night and Day is a jam. Take a listen. This is where I would also like to mention that the game in some older US magazines and some early alphas had a real world influence where Usha was replaced with NATO, so you'd be blowing up skyscrapers with planes in a large city based in the real world. Thankfully, they stuck to Strange Real, and once that last building falls, Mission 4 is completed. Of course, you can't just destroy some buildings and expect the enemy to give up. You have to cripple their supply chain, so Mission 5 tasks us with destroying an oil refinery. The desert map, however, is quite large, with us having to follow pipes to get to the targets. There isn't much out there as it's just swaths of sand, and you know how I feel about sand.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
We bag that mission rather quickly, and it pushes us right into the next ground attack mission, which is to destroy some mining equipment. The only really dangerous thing in this mission, and actually in a lot of the missions, is the gun emplacements. But we yearn for the mines, and that fuels us to destroy the last bit of equipment to bag mission 6. Then comes the mission of dread, the canyon run. Now, every Ace Combat game afterwards does have a canyon run somewhere in it. Generally, it involves fitting your aircraft down a winding pathway that is often just wide enough for the aircraft. Luckily, the PS1 graphics save us here, as the canyon doesn't have all the geometry that might screw you up. I took the legendary F4 Phantom, as the aircraft is one of the slower ones in the game, so it should be easier to get down the canyon when this happened.
Enemy in sight.
I clipped 1 pixel of my tail on the wall and sent myself catapulting into the ground below. That is the first death of our run, losing one of the most legendary aircraft of all time. But I buckled up my pants and redid the run with the F-14 and was extra careful when going down the canyon, and it was a successful run. But was it really? We lost an aircraft, and no matter how bad the plane is, it's still one of our lives that are gone. But we must continue on, with the enemy now mounting a counterattack on the city we took in the 4th mission. In the mission, the enemy employs B-2 stealth bombers, which have the mechanic of having to keep our eyes on them as they are stealth, so radar doesn't track them all that well. We also have to destroy the small airbase and the bombers that are situated in that base when we are met with this texture. I have no idea what the texture is, as to me it looks like some mysterious rock forest where a goblin lives, but I guess it's supposed to be a cliffside. It is the PS1, so you really can't judge it that harshly, but still, what is it? Like, what is it supposed to be? It looks really weird. Either way, we destroy the 2 bombers at the base and put another checkmark on our path to victory over the organization. Then I decided to tackle the enemy's port at Navy Island because, hey, naming things is hard, and it's a naval port island, so the name just checks out anyways. I took my F-15 into this mission, and I missed one of the oil canisters on my first pass by, which would prove to be the biggest mistake I could make. I swooped around taking out the boat and the airport when the worst thing happened.
Enemy in sight. Locked on target.
No! There goes the F-15. I failed to pull my F-15 up in time and I crashed, losing one of the best fighter aircraft in the entire game. So I decided to attack the port again, this time in the Tornado, and while there was a ship in the yard, I was surprised to see no subs. And while there may be no subs in the port, you can still take this time to subscribe to the channel. It helps out a ton, and it makes me create more videos like this one that you are watching currently. As we soldiered on, taking out the dangerous fleet of ships that apparently is just one boat with an anti-aircraft cannon, we learned afterwards that the enemy was mounting a swift counterattack with some B-2 bombers. So we spend very little time shooting down these and bagged the 10th mission as well. It wasn't that very long of a mission, as it's just a few B-2 bombers and a few fighter escorts which we just ignored. Afterwards, we got tasked with being an escort to recover a VIP that got stuck in the mountains. We had to take a C5 all the way to the enemy airport to pick them up like some expensive and dangerous Uber. Of course, the enemy sends up an interception task force that I took way too long shooting down the first batch that led to the C5 almost getting shot down. Oops. But it got to its destination eventually, and that's when I decided to take a small break from playing the game. I did end up skipping the recon mission, but that is just a really boring mission that ends up with you getting ganged up on by a bunch of YF-23s after destroying one small airplane on the ground. And it was getting close to midnight, so I didn't want to play late into the morning, so I waited until the next day. When I woke up the next morning, I decided to take the fight to the mothership. And when you think of mothership and ace combat, you think of something like the Arsenal Bird or the XB-01. So what horror could this almighty mothership be? It's just an aircraft carrier. A singular aircraft carrier and a few escorts, that's all. The first time I took the F-18 up into the air was when I learned that if you get shot by a missile, your plane's first action is to dive down a little bit. And that caused this to happen. Yeah, I lost the first plane I ever purchased in the game, which sucks, but life must go on. So I decided to purchase the A-10 Warthog when this happened not even that long into the mission. Damn, we're losing a lot of aircraft on this mothership. Yeah, I got shot down out of the skies, losing one of the better attacking aircraft in the entire game, but we still have the old reliable with the Tornado. It was a lot of hit and run tactics to take out the smaller ships that were around the carrier, making sure to take their oddly inaccurate anti-aircraft cannons out before attacking the aircraft carrier directly. Of course, we sink it and we complete the mission. This is also where I'd like to mention that I skipped mission 14 because that is one of the things about the mission structure in air combat. You can just skip a couple of the missions, making this game great for speedrunning. Now we are tasked with taking out the enemy's fortress, which is connected by the Golden Gate Bridge, I guess, and our objective is to blow up that bridge and the airbase that is behind it. Why we are destroying a bridge sort of makes sense. It does cut a supply line off to the enemy, and I did miss one of the links to the bridge on my first pass because I am a very good pilot and I'm good at shooting things on the ground. Instead of attacking the bridge again, I just went past it and decided to go attack the airbase, also trying to shoot down one of the F-22 escorts, which was not very easy because it's an F-22, but once I did shoot it down and I took out the buildings below, I went back and I took out the last piece of the bridge, which completed the mission. Then the horror returns once again, this time with a second canyon run. This time it has caves added in to really reinforce that you are not allowed to fly up at all during the mission. Of course, I took the F-14 in as that was the first aircraft I ever flew in the game and the savior of the last tunnel run when this happened.
Enemy in sight. Enemy in sight. Fire, back one.
I was probably like right at the end too, wasn't I? There's always something I'll clip my wing on. That's just like a given. I clipped 1 pixel of my wing on the wall and it killed it. The first aircraft we ever flew, and the one that has seen a lot of missions. It's like losing your starter Pokemon in a Nuzlocke at the Elite Four. You're right at the end, and the one that you've carried with you the entire game is gone. But we have to complete the mission one way or another, so I grabbed the SF-39 Gripen, which is a small and maneuverable fighter, when I realized that I had crashed so close to the end and my reaction was not a very happy one. I was at the end of the tunnel! God damn it! Motherfucker! I was at the end of the tunnel the first time. I lost my F-14 like right at the end. Aw, this is depressing. Aw. But hey, we got out of the tunnel and now it's time for the final mission. The enemy has a flying airbase, similar to that of the later games, and they are slowly flying it towards all of the areas we have liberated. It is our job to take it down. So I grabbed the F-22 Raptor because I might as well finish it in the plane that is on the cover of the game. Yeah, fate has a funny way of saying no, and it got shot down. For the second time, might I add, as the first time I recorded air combat, I recorded it in a format that my editing software didn't like, so I had to redo it all. So then I took the MiG-31 out. Sure, it's not maneuverable,
we'll do it in the MiG.
but it's
We'll do it in
fast and it
MiG-31.
hits hard. And also, the stealth doesn't work too well for me.
Right now.
But all a high attack rating means is that, basically,
Enemy target.
I do more damage to everything. I crashed it because I hit the underside of the aircraft on the engine of the massive airship. So this mission was going swimmingly, as you could tell. I already lost 2 of my greatest aircraft.
Or into the front of the boss.
I pulled it out. The God Plane. A plane so good that Ace Combat 7 had to have 5 variants of it. The Flanker. Because when you need something done, you will get it done in a flanker. I took the good old Su-27 up into the air, and here's what happened. It was a hard-fought battle with lots of hit-and-run tactics, but I took out the engines. One by one they fell. Then it was time to hit the cockpit, and I swooped in for the final time, and it was done. The air fortress had fallen. The run is over, and we fly off into the sunset, never to be seen again. We have secured peace for Yuja, and they will never have a problem again with another coup d'etat. In total, the full time of this playthrough was 1 hour and 45 minutes. We lost a grand total of 8 aircraft, and this would end up costing my mercenary company a grand total of $626,700,000 US, which puts us in a little bit of debt. Hopefully Yuja pays well.